There are at least 5 good reasons why every reasonable person should reject BDS, that is, the tactic of boycotting, divesting, and sanctioning only the nation state of the Jewish people. The first reason is that BDS places all the blame for the current stalemate in the Middle East on Israel. The reality is that Palestinians share much of the blame, indeed, most of the blame. The Palestinians were offered a state in 1937, 1938 by the Peel Commission. They rejected it, saying the Palestinians aren't a people. We don't want a state. We just don't want there to be a Jewish state. They rejected an opportunity for statehood in 1947 when the United Nations partitioned Palestine into 2 states for 2 people. They went to war trying to destroy the nation state of the Jewish people, Israel, that declared its independence in 1948. Then again in 1967, they turned down an opportunity of land for peace, going to Khartoum and issuing their 3 famous no's: no recognition, no peace, and no negotiation. In 2001, President Clinton, Prime Minister Ed Barak offered the Palestinians an extraordinarily generous peace plan that would have given them a state. Yasser Arafat said no and started an intifada which killed more than 4,000 people. And in 2008, the Palestinians did not respond positively to an offer by Prime Minister Ehud Olmert, which would have given them a state on the vast majority, over 95% of the West Bank, and a divided Jerusalem with a capital for the Palestinian state. So much of the blame lies with the Palestinians, and yet BDS would focus all the blame on Israel. So that's the first reason. The second reason is BDS emboldens the Palestinian leadership to reject negotiations and reject a compromised peace. It leads them falsely to believe that BDS will lead somehow to a Palestinian state, that Israel will be forced to give a Palestinian state because they're being boycotted. That's just not going to happen. Israel's economy is strong. The vast majority of the world doesn't accept a boycott of Israel. And so it will not work, and it will diminish the incentive of the Palestinians to come to the negotiating table and the bargaining table. So it's very bad for any peaceful resolution. The third reason is that by boycotting and divesting only from the nation state of the Jewish people, it sends a terrible message and violates the core principle of human rights, which is the worst first. Israel, by any reckoning, is among the best when it comes to human rights. No country in the world faced with threats comparable to those faced by Israel has ever had a better record of human rights. As Colonel Richard Kemp, who was the head of the NATO forces in Afghanistan, said, no country has ever devoted more time and attention to protecting the civilian people who live among their enemies and who are used as human shields. And so if there were, in fact, a BDS movement which put the worst first, which lined up all the countries in the world in terms of how bad the human rights records are and how impossible it is to get relief from within the country, Israel would be at the very, very bottom of that list. And so many other countries would be near the top. So it violates the rule of the worst first. The fourth reason is it hurts other causes. By focusing only on the nation state of the Jewish people, it deflects attention away from the genocides that are occurring in parts of the world, the crisis in Syria, the refusal of the world to recognize Kurdish statehood or Tibetan independence. It simply focuses too much on one area of the world where it's complex. The Kurds, for example, were never offered statehood. The Palestinians were offered it 4 times and rejected it. The Tibetans were never offered independence. And yet it's only Israel that is the subject of a boycott and divestment tactic. And finally, the BDS tactic promotes anti-Semitism. Because it portrays Israel as the worst offender. It essentially promotes a 21st century version of the blood libel. It creates caricatures of Israelis. I myself have been the subject of such caricatures. At the newspaper of the University of California at Berkeley, they portrayed me in a Nazi-like cartoon with me stomping on Palestinian children and holding up an IDF soldier who was murdering a Palestinian youth in cold blood. It promotes anti-Zionism, which then often morphs into anti-Semitism. So there are many, many other good reasons against BDS, and there are no good reasons for it. So every moral person should stand strongly opposed to singling out Israel for boycott, divestment, and sanction. It's an immoral policy, it's an ineffective policy, and it's a policy that hurts the processes of peace. I'm Alan Dershowitz, and you're watching JTV.
To stay up to date with the latest JTV content, if you're on YouTube, click subscribe below the video and the alarm bell. And if you're on Facebook, click the like button, and under following, click see first.